In the headlines, the top U.S. military officer says Washington has made progress with Seoul and Tokyo on establishing an integrated air and missile defense umbrella in the Asia-Pacific region. The Korean economy grew 3.3% last year. The country's per capita GNI also grew, but it's largely attributed to the strong local currency. And search operations resume in the tragic Alpine jet crash. One of the black box recorders has been found. Hello and welcome to Arirang News. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I am Kang Chery. The United States is pushing to strengthen its trilateral cooperation with South Korea and Japan in terms of missile defense. This as Martin Dempsey, the chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, is set to arrive in Seoul on Thursday. And there's speculation that he will want to talk about the possible deployment of controversial U.S. missile defense system to South Korea during his stay. Geunhye Kim tells us more.
Building an integrated air and missile defense system will definitely top the agenda. Embarking on his trip to Korea and Japan on Tuesday, General Martin Dempsey said the U.S. is making progress on an integrated air and missile umbrella defense system with Seoul and Tokyo. Dempsey did not elaborate further, but his trip is seen as a push for missile defense cooperation between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo. But this backdrop is raising questions whether or not the talks will cover the deployment of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or the so-called THAAD, to South Korea. Earlier this week, a senior U.S. official indicated that THAAD would be on the agenda when Dempsey meets his counterpart, Geunhye, on Friday. Seoul, however, dismissed such claims, saying it's not on its official agenda. The American missile defense system is highly controversial. Washington says a deployment of THAAD on Korean soil is crucial for regional peace, while other nations, namely China and Russia, strongly opposes against the idea, saying it threatens their national security. Other topics up for discussion are the transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul, response options against North Korea's provocations, and Seoul-Washington joint military exercises. The talks are expected to continue when U.S. Secretary of State Ashton Carter visits Seoul next month for the first time since taking office. Geunhye Kim, Arirang News.
And Russia has once again expressed concern about the possible deployment of THAAD to South Korea, calling on Seoul to carefully assess the positive and negative repercussions. In a statement, Russia's foreign ministry said Tuesday that the THAAD deployment to South Korea could complicate nuclear talks with North Korea and spark an arms race in Northeast Asia. The ministry added that, quote, it cannot help but be concerned considering the destructive nature of the missile defense system's impact on international security and strategic stability. North Korea says the United States has fabricated the story of North Korea sinking a South Korean warship named Cheonan because it wanted to expand American influence in Northeast Asia. Pyongyang's military unit issued a statement at the truce village of Panmunjom, and here is a direct quote. The incident was orchestrated by the United States out of its intention to maintain control of South Korea and Japan. The accusation comes just a day ahead of the 5th anniversary of the sinking of Cheonan. An international probe had concluded that the vessel was hit by a torpedo from a North Korean submarine, but Pyongyang denies any involvement in the incident.
For the latest in news that impacts Korea and the world, join Kang Chery for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8, every weeknight on Arirang TV.
Human Rights Council headquarters in Geneva on Thursday, finding ways to... Korea's gross national income per capita rose to over $28,000 last year, boosting expectations for the economy to reach the $30,000 mark in 2015. But analysts say it won't be an easy task. Our Kang Chery explains why.
Despite Korea's sluggish pace of recovery, the gross national income per capita last year jumped around 7.5% to more than $28,000. The Bank of Korea says the rise is largely a result of the strong Korean won, which rose by nearly 4% against the greenback last year rather than an actual increase in the country's purchasing power. And that is why many express skepticism that the gross national income will top the 30,000 mark this year.
With the U.S. Federal Reserve widely expected to raise its key rate in the coming months, the Korean won is likely to weaken against the dollar that will eventually shrink the gross national income.
The Korean economy expanded 3.3% over the last year, a slight improvement from 2013 when it only expanded by 2.9%. But by quarter, the economy is on a downward spiral, with fourth quarter growth marking the slowest pace since the first quarter of 2009 when the country was hit by the global financial crisis. Given that the central bank cut its latest growth forecast for the economy to 3.4% for this year, while Nomura has pegged Korea's GDP growth at 2.5%, down 0.5 percentage points from its earlier forecast. Kang Chery, Arirang News.
President Park Geunhye, who has been pushing to reform the labor market, says change is no longer a choice but part of a survival strategy. Meeting with representatives of 100 businesses that led initiatives to create jobs last year, she offered praise for their efforts to compromise with unions and expand flex time. President Park stressed that job creation is the country's top priority, adding that a favorable environment for employment will help Korea make a leap forward. While the businesses also hired more students balancing work and school, the president vowed to also invest in the service sector, where many jobs are sought by young people. Most Korean companies look into applicants' educational background first and foremost when hiring new people, but that may change as state-run firms are planning to put more emphasis on skills and experience rather than what looks good on paper. Our Son Jung-in has the story.
Yang Jae-hoon was hired at the Korea Cadastral Survey Corporation last June after 2 failed trials. His 2 years of working in the company's internship program and 3 job-related licenses were not enough to get the job because of his low English scores. But after the company adopted the employment system introduced by the government, his efforts were finally rewarded.
At that time, I had to take a test on common knowledge and English and not so much on my related major. It may have been an easy test for some, but I had to go through a difficult time back then.
The National Competency Standards divides categories for more than 800 jobs and specifies how much skill and knowledge is required to work in that field. It also provides a standard to evaluate the competency of the applicants. With the adoption of the system, job applicants will no longer need to worry about building up general qualifications such as high TOEIC scores that are unrelated to the job they want. And for companies, it helps them hire rookies based on their competency.
The employees that we hired based on the NCS were well prepared to be put in the field right away, and they carried out the job well.
The government plans to gradually expand the NCS system to reach all the state-run enterprises by 2019. Among some 300 public companies in Korea, 130 of them, including KEPCO and National Health Service, aim to hire 3,000 rookies based on the system this year. Experts point out that if they don't want this system to become another mere requirement for job seekers, schools and universities should focus their education on practical vocational skills. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
President Park also spent the monthly Culture Day watching young artists' performance, in which they also talked about their career paths and jobs. The group of young artists, with support from the President's Youth Committee, led the planning and production of today's program, starting with a fusion jazz performance by a wind and brass instrument band. The program showcased works by a theater group, a dance troupe, and a Korean traditional music band. President Park also talked to the performers and a young audience about their career concerns and vowed various support programs for them to stay creative in their work and to find more opportunities in Korea and abroad. Korea's ICT ministry is a symbol of President Park Geun-hye's creative economy. Entering its third year since launching, the ministry has laid out an ambitious plan to become a global ICT leader by the year 2020. Our Song Ji-sun has the details.
Creative Korea led by ICT. That's the key slogan in a new roadmap from Korea's Ministry of Future Planning, ICT and Science. The plan, dubbed K-ICT Strategies, lays out a vision for 2020. The government will inject $8.2 billion over the next 5 years, looking for a market expansion of 8% compared to the current 6% growth. Government officials hope exports will top $210 billion in 2020, up from the current $174 billion. Among the key projects unveiled Wednesday, Seoul aims to demonstrate 5G technologies at the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games ahead of its commercial launch in 2020. Korea also expects to become the first to launch terrestrial UHD television services that same year. Korea is already taking the lead in semiconductors, display panels, and smartphones, and Seoul seeks to secure the top spot for the next 2 to 3 decades by supporting innovation and convergence. The set of measures follows the ministry's restructuring announced earlier this month. The moves were made to better adapt to the fast development of the ICT industries and to take prompt actions to achieve its initiatives in President Park's creative economy drive. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics is cozying up with Microsoft, seemingly putting their past legal disputes behind. They forged a deal to pre-install Microsoft services on Samsung's Android-based mobile devices. Our Chi Myung-gil tells us about what may have motivated the former enemies.
U.S. software king Microsoft and Korea's tech giant Samsung, once competitors, have now made a deal to cooperate with each other. Samsung's upcoming Galaxy S6 series will come preloaded with Microsoft-built applications, ranging from flagship software like Microsoft Word to the note-taking application OneNote. The change will give Android users a broader selection of choices. So what's behind this deal? Currently, Google controls the Android operating system, and Microsoft will now be able to get a foot in the door with Samsung's deal. Industry watchers say Microsoft has more to gain from Samsung's deal, as its apps have been sidelined by Google and Apple products. Samsung decided to collaborate with Microsoft because the success of its new lineup of S6 smartphones is crucial to the company's future. Samsung fears that without the deal, it could replicate lackluster sales of the Galaxy S5, which was outstripped by the iPhone. Market analysts added that the uneasy partnership highlights intense competition in the global smartphone market, and Samsung may continue to broaden its strategic alliances. The move comes after the two pioneering companies settled a lawsuit over Android patent licensing last month, and analysts see it as a prelude to more deals in the future. Chi Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Amid ongoing controversy surrounding pension reforms for public servants, Korea's main opposition party says it has a plan that could save the government $290 billion. The New Politics Alliance for Democracy said on Wednesday that funds could be saved by lowering pension amounts for high-ranking officials while still keeping current pension levels for mid to lower-level civil servants. The ruling party, meantime, has criticized the plan, calling it vague for not presenting key figures like contribution rates. Public sector unions also voiced opposition, saying it would cost civil servants too much. Korea's public pension has suffered a deficit since 1995. To tackle the country's snowballing household debt, the government has rolled out a new program allowing mortgage borrowers to switch over to low fixed-rate loans. The relief program kicked off yesterday with throngs of loan hopefuls lining up at the banks. Shin Se-min has the story.
The so-called relief loans introduced by the Financial Services Commission on Tuesday drew an astonishing number of applicants to local banks. In just a day, more than 20,000 applicants transferred a total of some 4 trillion won, or $3.6 billion worth of mortgages. They're all trying to manage their household debt by switching to the new mortgage rates, which are between 2.5 to 2.7%, lower than the 3% range previously offered. This opportunity to switch to a lower rate loan isn't available to everyone. The program targets lenders whose fixed-rate mortgage-backed loan is less than $450,000, or those with mortgage property values of little over $800,000. In addition, the applicants must be clean of loan delinquent payments for the last 6 months. With the new mortgages, the Commission is hopeful that household debt will stabilize as they allow debtors to steadily pay back loans over a longer period of time. The massive shift to the government-initiated mortgage program show that many Koreans are struggling to restructure their household debt amid the ongoing sluggish economy, a matter that policymakers have dubbed a time bomb for the Korean economy. Korea's total household debt rose over $500 billion in February from the first month of the year, surpassing the 1,000 trillion won mark, or $950 billion last year. Experts say challenges still linger as to how the government can strike a balance between containing the ballooning household debt and reviving the domestic economy by fueling consumer spending. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Checking in on the latest from the Germanwings plane crash in the French Alps. Search operations have resumed, but there's little hope of finding any survivors. To tell us more about this story and more, Paul E. is joining us from the News Center. Paul, there are 150 people on board this passenger jet, including 16 school children. What's the latest update on the recovery efforts?
Well, despite bad weather and the harsh mountainous terrain, one of the black box recorders was found near the crash site. Now, debris from the Airbus A320 wreckage is estimated to be scattered across 16,000 square meters. This as more than 600 police and firefighters have been dispatched to this site in order to recover bodies and any clues that can shed light on this tragic and still unclear accident. Arirang's Kwon So-ah reports.
Surveying the scene for a moment said it all. Authorities could see there was no chance anyone survived this plane crash in a remote part of the French Alps. Officials say the priority is to return as many victims' bodies as possible, identify them, and find out what caused the accident. Recovery efforts resumed at dawn, and authorities say the operation could take days. One of the plane's black box recorders was found in the mountains amid the debris. The jet was headed to the German city of Düsseldorf from Barcelona when it plunged from the sky midway through the flight.
I was doing some odd jobs behind my house when I saw a plane passing by. I said it's a bit low.
I saw the plane at a low altitude for 2 or 3 seconds, and as soon as I saw that, I sensed it was going to crash.
Aviation experts say it's a rare incident, as the crash happened in the middle of the cruise phase, which is generally considered the safest part of a flight. The majority of air accidents happen during takeoff or landing. Germanwings is a subsidiary of Germany's flagship airline Lufthansa, deemed one of the safest in the world.
It's the first time in our 60-year history that we have lost a plane in flight, and we still have to digest that. The most important thing now is to be with those who lost people today in our thoughts.
The nationalities of those on board are still being confirmed, but officials say most came from Spain and Germany, including 16 teenagers. German media reports that a number of Germanwings flights have been cancelled after the accident, as crew members have been refusing to fly. Reports have suggested that staff were concerned about a repair that was performed on the plane the day before it crashed, but the airline insists the repair to the nose-wheel landing doors was not safety-related. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said the crash had left Germany, France and Spain in a state of deep mourning. Leaders of the countries affected are scheduled to pay their respects at the accident site Wednesday local time. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
And following up on another tragic incident, the bodies of 3 Japanese nationals killed in last week's terror attack in Tunisia have returned home. Paul, more than 20 people lost their lives during the siege, most of them foreign tourists. What do we know about these Japanese victims?
Well, Japanese media have identified all 3 who lost their lives on that fateful trip. They include a 49-year-old mother and her 22-year-old daughter, as well as women in her late 60s. Their coffins arrived at Narita Airport on Tuesday, adorned with white flowers, a symbol of mourning. They'll be handed over to police to undergo autopsies. Earlier at a news conference, a top Japanese government spokesman has paid tribute to his fellow countrymen.
The bodies of 3 victims who lost their lives in the terrorist attack in Tunisia are returning to Japan. I want to express my deep condolences to them and their families. I'm also hoping for a speedy recovery for those injured in the attack.
Meanwhile, the National Bardo Museum in Tunis, where the attack took place, announced it would be postponing its reopening until Sunday. The famed museum's curator didn't explain what prompted the last-minute change, but he did cite logistical and security concerns.
And shifting to the latest diplomatic moves on the global stage, the European Union has called on the U.S. to end its embargo on Cuba. This as both Washington and Havana are pushing to restore their relations after more than 50 years of hostilities.
That's right, and this statement from the EU is expected to help in advancing that goal following the White House's historic policy shift on Cuba. EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini made the announcement on Tuesday in Havana. She said that the lifting of the economic embargo would bring in investment, but more importantly, benefit the Cuban people. Mogherini also spoke about her meeting with Cuban leader Raul Castro.
But we discussed in particular the need to structure our dialogue on human rights and to make sure that on one side all human rights can be respected. We discussed obviously of the human rights situation in Cuba, but also of the human rights situation in Europe. It's something I always like to remind to ourselves, to us Europeans. We are not there to teach or to preach. We also have our own challenges at home.
Human rights is a sensitive subject in Cuba. Critics accuse the one-party state of monopolizing the media and restricting free speech, all in the name of protecting its 1959 revolution.
And finally, a renowned actor and funny man, Will Ferrell, has received one of the most prestigious honors in the entertainment industry, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Give us the rundown on this Ferrell.
Well, he's been stealing the show since getting his start as a cast member on Saturday Night Live in the 1990s. Since then, he's been a breakout success on the big screen. The 47-year-old actor was on hand for the Tuesday ceremony on Hollywood Boulevard, along with actor John C. Reilly and other A-list celebrities. After giving thanks to his friends and family, Ferrell couldn't resist cracking just one more joke.
It goes without saying that I feel so fortunate, and yet I can't accept this award. Just cover it up for someone else. No, I'm kidding. I should just walk away, though, right? Wouldn't that be? Yeah. No, I not only accept it, but I will be here every day from 3 to 5 p.m. polishing the star, okay? You can count on that. And on those days...
Ferrell has starred in a string of popular movies from Anchorman to Elf, as well as filling memorable roles in comedies such as Zoolander and Old School. However, his most recent work, Get Hard, is receiving harsh criticism after it premiered last week at the South by Southwest Film Festival. Chery?
And we all remember the famous line, "Stay classy," right? All right, let's leave it there for now. Thank you so much, Paul, for those stories, and we will see you again in just about 2 hours.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather forecast. This morning we woke up to chilly conditions nationwide, but warm air has moved in from the west, leading to a rise in the mercury above seasonal averages under mostly clear skies. Now, humidity levels continue to remain very dry in most parts of the country, and dry weather advisories have been extended across the nation. Now, we do have light showers in store on Sunday for the capital and for parts of Gangwon province, but it won't be enough to turn around the dryness. And as for the rest of the week, we can expect mild spring-like weather to continue. On to tomorrow's readings. Seoul reaches a high of 14, Daegu and Gwangju hit the high teens. Moving on to other regions, Jeju peaks at 15, Dokdo hits 12, Mount Kumgang reaches 6. Those are the updates I have for you now. I'll see you soon.
And that does it for this edition of Arirang News. Thanks for watching.